If you were sober, I would make the first move.
Those 8 words hung in the rain-soaked air between us, and I watched her green eyes widen with something I could not quite name. Shock, maybe, or hope, or both tangled together in that messy way emotions get when everything you thought you knew about someone suddenly shifts. I never thought I would be standing on my front porch at midnight rain, hammering down so hard it sounded like applause, watching my boss stumble up my driveway in a dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent. But that is exactly where I found myself on that October night that would change everything. Scarlett Morgan was not supposed to be here. She was supposed to be at the company gala, charming investors and commanding rooms. The way she always did, with that perfect blonde hair and those piercing green eyes that seemed to see through every wall people tried to build. She was supposed to be untouchable, unreachable, the youngest CEO in Apex creative history who had clawed her way to the top and never let anyone forget it. But the woman swaying on my doorstep was none of those things. Her mascara ran in dark rivers down her cheeks. Her red dress, that stunning floor-length scarlet gown that had made my heart stop earlier that evening, was now soaked through and clinging to her body in ways I was trying very hard not to notice. Her hair hung in wet tangles around her face, and she was crying, actually crying, which I had never seen her do in the 6 months I had worked for her. She reached for me, then her cold fingers finding my face, and she leaned in to kiss me, with champagne still sweet on her breath, and I wanted to let her. God help me, I wanted to let her, more than I had wanted anything in 3 long years. But I could not. Not like this. Not when she would not remember it in the morning, and not when my 5-year-old daughter was sleeping just down the hall, trusting me to make the right choices, even when the wrong ones looked so tempting. So I caught her face in my hands, gently, carefully, the way you hold something precious and breakable, and I stopped her before her lips could reach mine. If you were sober, I told her, my voice rough with everything I was holding back, I would make the first move. Her eyes went wide, her breath caught, and for just a moment, before the champagne haze claimed her completely, I saw something real flash across her face. Something that looked like the same desperate hope I had been trying to bury for months. Then she collapsed against my chest, and I held her there in the rain, wondering how we had gotten here and terrified of where we might go next. But that night was only the beginning. What happened in the months that followed would test everything I thought I knew about love, about loss, and about the terrifying possibility of second chances. Before we continue, please tell us, where in the world are you tuning in from? We love seeing how far our stories travel. The alarm screamed at 6 in the morning, same as it did every day, and Daniel Hayes groaned as he reached over to silence it. His bed felt too empty, the way it had for 3 years now, and he lay there for just a moment, staring at the ceiling and gathering the strength to face another day of being everything to everyone. Then he heard small footsteps padding down the hallway, and despite everything, he smiled. "Daddy, are you awake?" Emma's voice drifted through the door, high and sweet, and full of the innocent expectation that he would always be there when she needed him. "I am now, sweetheart," he called back, swinging his legs over the side of the bed. "Come on in." The door burst open with the kind of enthusiasm only a 5-year-old could muster at this hour, and Emma launched herself onto his bed with her curly brown hair flying behind her like a wild halo. She was wearing her favorite pajamas, the ones with the purple butterflies, and she was already chattering about her dreams and her plans for the day and whether they could have pancakes for breakfast. Pancakes, it is, Daniel agreed, scooping her up and carrying her toward the kitchen. But you have to help me flip them. Deal, deal, Emma said solemnly, as if they were negotiating a business contract. This was their routine, the sacred rhythm that had kept them both afloat since Rachel died. Mornings were for pancakes with smiley faces, because that was what Rachel had always made. Evenings were for bedtime stories and goodnight kisses and the ritual of saying, I love you to the moon and back. In between, Daniel did everything in his power to be both mother and father to this little girl who had already lost so much. He made the pancakes while Emma sat at the counter, swinging her legs and telling him about the rock she had found yesterday at the playground. It was smooth and grey with tiny sparkles, and she was absolutely certain it was magical. Maybe it is, Daniel said, because he had learned that a little magic was sometimes the only thing that got you through the hard days. Daddy, Emma said suddenly, her voice going quieter in that way it did when she was about to ask something important. Do you think Mommy can see us from heaven? Daniel's hand tightened on the spatula. The question still hit him like a punch to the gut, even after all this time. I think so, sweetheart, he managed. I think she watches over us every single day. Good. Emma nodded seriously. Because I want her to know I still remember her. Sometimes I get scared that I will forget what she looked like. You will not forget, Daniel promised, his voice rough. I will make sure of it. We have pictures everywhere, and we talk about her all the time, and she is in your heart forever. You cannot forget someone who lives in your heart. Emma seemed satisfied with this answer. She went back to chattering about her magical rock, and Daniel went back to making pancakes, and neither of them mentioned the way his eyes had gone shiny with tears he would not let fall. After breakfast, he helped Emma get dressed for kindergarten, brushing her tangled curls into something resembling presentable and making sure her shoes were on the right feet. They passed Rachel's photo on the mantel on their way to the door, the same spot it had occupied for 3 years, because Daniel still could not bring himself to move it. Bye, Mommy, Emma said, waving at the picture like she did every morning. I love you. Daniel swallowed hard and whispered his own goodbye, the same words he had said every day since that terrible phone call that had shattered his world. 3 years ago, everything had been different. He had been a husband, a new father, a man with plans and dreams, and a future that stretched out bright and full of promise. Rachel had kissed him goodbye that morning, her smile lighting up their small kitchen, and she had said the words he would replay in his mind 10,000 times in the years to come. Do not work too late, she had said. I will pick up Emma from daycare. Love you. He had worked too late anyway. He always did back then, so focused on building his freelance career that he sometimes forgot to come up for air. And when his phone rang at 9:47 that night, he had almost ignored it, thinking it could wait until morning. But something made him answer. Some instinct, some premonition, some cosmic warning that his life was about to split into before and after. A drunk driver had run a red light. Rachel's car had been T-boned at the intersection. She was gone before the ambulance even arrived. Daniel remembered standing in that hospital. 2-year-old Emma screaming in his arms, asking for Mama over and over again, while he tried to comprehend that Mama was never coming back. He remembered the funeral where he could not cry because Emma needed him to be strong. He remembered the 6 months that followed when he went through the motions of living while feeling absolutely nothing inside. Single parenthood had never been part of his plan. But plans do not matter when life decides to rewrite your story. Now, 3 years later, he had rebuilt something resembling a life. He freelanced from home so he could be there when Emma needed him. He had learned to cook and clean and braid hair and attend tea parties with stuffed animals. He had become both mother and father, and most days he thought he was doing an okay job, but he was lonely. God, he was lonely. Not for just anyone, but for the specific kind of companionship that Rachel had provided someone who knew him inside and out. Someone who saw his worst moments and loved him anyway. Someone who made him feel less alone in the world. He had locked that longing away though. Emma came first. She was the only woman who would ever have his heart again. Or so he thought. The invitation to interview at Apex Creative Agency came out of nowhere like a lifeline thrown to a drowning man who had not even realized he was underwater. Daniel had been freelancing for years, building a decent portfolio and a solid reputation, but the income was unpredictable and the health insurance was non-existent, and every month felt like a high-wire act without a net. So when the email landed in his inbox, requesting a meeting with the CEO herself to discuss a full-time position, he read it 3 times before he believed it was real. Scarlett Morgan wanted to see him. Scarlett Morgan, whose name he had read in industry magazines and whose company was known for launching some of the most innovative marketing campaigns in the country. Scarlett Morgan, who had built Apex from the ground up and who terrified and fascinated everyone in equal measure. He almost did not go. The interview was at 2 in the afternoon, which meant arranging childcare for Emma, which meant asking his mother-in-law Susan for help, which meant admitting that he needed something he could not provide for himself. But Susan had practically pushed him out the door, insisting that Rachel would have wanted him to take every opportunity that came his way. So, Daniel found himself standing in front of Apex Creative's gleaming glass building, his best suit feeling suddenly inadequate, and his portfolio tucked under his arm like a security blanket. The building stretched toward the sky, all sharp angles and modern ambition, and he had to crane his neck to see the top. Inside the lobby was even more intimidating. Chrome and marble and fresh flowers that probably cost more than his grocery budget. A receptionist with perfect hair and a polished smile directed him to the 15th floor, and he stepped into an elevator that moved so smoothly he barely felt it climbing. The doors opened onto another world. Open concept workspace filled with creative types who looked like they had stepped out of a magazine. Exposed brick and reclaimed wood and splashes of color everywhere. And at the far end, a corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the entire city. That was where he found her. Scarlett Morgan stood with her back to him, gazing out at the skyline. And for a moment, Daniel just stared. She was younger than he had expected, maybe early 30s, with blonde hair pulled back in a sleek ponytail that somehow managed to look both professional and effortlessly elegant. She wore a tailored navy blazer over a white blouse, and when she turned to face him, her green eyes hit him like a physical force. "You must be Daniel Hayes," she said, and her voice was exactly the way he had imagined it, cool and controlled and completely self-assured. "Please sit down." He sat in the chair across from her desk, feeling suddenly like a student called to the principal's office. She took the seat behind her desk and reached for his portfolio without any of the usual small talk, flipping through pages, with the focused intensity of someone who actually cared about what she was seeing. "This work on the Morrison campaign," she said, tapping one of his designs. "The color theory is exceptional. Most designers play it safe, but you took a risk here. It paid off." "Thank you," Daniel managed, surprised by the specific praise. He had expected cold efficiency, not genuine appreciation. "And this one." She flipped to another page. "The family-themed series for Hartwell Insurance." Something shifted in her expression. Something he could not quite read. "This is beautiful work. Emotional, without being manipulative. How did you approach it?" Daniel hesitated. That campaign had been personal. He had designed it just months after Rachel's death, pouring all his grief and love and longing into images that tried to capture what family really meant. "I thought about what matters most," he said finally. "Not what insurance companies usually sell, which is security and safety, but what lies underneath that. The people we are trying to protect, the moments we are afraid to lose." Scarlett was quiet for a moment, her eyes still on the designs. When she looked up again, there was something different in her gaze, something almost vulnerable. "I want to offer you a position," she said. "Senior designer, reporting directly to me. The salary is competitive, full benefits." And she paused as if choosing her words carefully. "I understand you have a daughter. We can work out flexible hours and remote options. Family comes first." Daniel blinked. He had prepared for tough negotiations, for proving his worth, for fighting for every inch. He had not prepared for this. "You do not even know me." He said the words coming out before he could stop them. "You have seen my portfolio, but that is just paper. Why would you offer me so much? Based on that? Because I know talent when I see it." Scarlett's voice was matter of fact, but something in her eyes suggested there was more she was not saying. "And because I have learned that the best people often come from unexpected places." She stood extending her hand. "What do you say, Daniel? Are you interested?" He should have asked for time to think about it. He should have discussed it with Susan, considered the logistics, weighed the pros and cons like a responsible adult. But something about Scarlett Morgan made him feel like taking a chance. "I'm interested," he said, shaking her hand and trying very hard not to notice the warmth of her palm against his. Driving home that afternoon, Daniel could not shake the feeling that something significant had just happened. Not just the job offer, though, that was life-changing enough. Something about Scarlett herself. She was beautiful, yes, but more than that, she was guarded. He recognized the walls she had built around herself because he had built the same ones. And for just a moment, when she had looked at his family-themed designs, he had seen something crack in her perfect facade. "She's your boss," he reminded himself firmly. "You have Emma to think about. Do not be stupid." But even as he thought it, he knew that working closely with Scarlett Morgan was going to be complicated in ways he could not begin to predict. The first month at Apex Creative was a whirlwind of new faces, new systems, and new ways of doing things that Daniel had to learn on the fly. The company operated at a pace he had not experienced in years of freelancing with deadlines that appeared out of nowhere and expectations that seemed to shift by the hour. But he loved it. God help him, he loved every exhausting minute of it. His desk was in the open workspace on the 15th floor, surrounded by other designers and copywriters and project managers who moved through their days with the kind of creative energy he had almost forgotten existed. There was something intoxicating about being part of a team again, about bouncing ideas off people who understood the craft, about feeling like he was contributing to something larger than himself. He learned to navigate the office dynamics quickly. There were the creatives who were mostly friendly and collaborative. There were the account managers who were mostly stressed and demanding. And then there was Miranda Blake. Miranda was the marketing director, a sharp-featured woman in her early 40s who had been with Apex for 15 years and who seemed to view Daniel's arrival as a personal insult. She never said anything overtly hostile, but her comments had edges that drew blood. "So you are the new golden boy," she said on his third day, appearing at his desk with a smile that did not reach her eyes. "Scarlett must see something special in you. She does not usually hire directly." Daniel was not sure how to respond to that, so he just smiled and said something polite about being grateful for the opportunity. Miranda's expression suggested she did not believe him for a second. "Just remember where you came from," she said sweetly. "Freelancers are a dime a dozen. The only reason you are here is because our CEO decided to take a chance on you. Do not make her regret it." She walked away before Daniel could respond, leaving him with the distinct impression that he had just made an enemy without even trying. But he did not have time to dwell on Miranda's hostility. There was too much work to do, too many projects demanding his attention, too many late nights at the office, while Emma stayed with Susan or the babysitter he could now afford to hire. He threw himself into the work with a dedication that surprised even himself. The Henderson campaign, the Morrison rebrand, the Westfield pitch, that would become his biggest project. Every assignment was an opportunity to prove that Scarlett had been right to take a chance on him. And through it all, there was Scarlett herself. She was everywhere and nowhere, at once a presence that seemed to permeate the entire office, even when she was not physically there. He would see her striding through the workspace with her phone pressed to her ear, her voice crisp and commanding. He would catch glimpses of her in meetings, dominating the room with a confidence that bordered on intimidating. He would find her name on emails at 1 a.m, suggesting she never actually went home. Their weekly one-on-one meetings became the highlights of his week, though he would never have admitted it to anyone. They met in her corner office every Friday at 4 officially to discuss his projects and progress, but the conversations always seemed to drift into other territory. "Tell me about Emma Scarlett," said one Friday, leaning back in her chair with what might have been genuine curiosity. "I saw the photo on your desk. She looks like a handful." Daniel smiled despite himself. "She is the best kind of handful. Yesterday she informed me that she is going to be a rock scientist when she grows up, except she does not want to study rocks that are boring, only magical ones." Scarlett's laugh was unexpected and unguarded, a sound he had not heard from her before. "Magical rocks! That is very specific. She has a whole collection. Pink ones, sparkly ones, smooth ones. Each one has a name and a backstory. I have learned more about geology in the past year than I ever learned in school. You are a good father, Scarlett said, and something in her voice made Daniel look up sharply. The softness was gone almost immediately, replaced by her usual professional demeanor. Anyway, the Henderson revisions look good. I will send them to the client Monday. That was how their conversations always went. Moments of unexpected warmth, followed by abrupt retreats behind walls he could not quite see, but definitely felt. Daniel learned to read the pattern, to recognize when she was letting her guard down and when she was pulling it back up. He also learned things about her bits and pieces that she dropped like breadcrumbs he could not help following. She arrived before everyone else and left after everyone else. She ate lunch alone in her office every single day. She was kind to the cleaning staff and the security guards in ways that other executives never bothered to be. And once, when he passed her office late at night on his way out, he heard her on a phone call that made his heart clench. "No, I do not have anyone coming for Thanksgiving," she was saying. "I will probably just work." "It is fine. I am used to it." The loneliness in her voice had mirrored his own so exactly that Daniel had to force himself to keep walking instead of knocking on her door. "She is your boss," he reminded himself for the 100th time. "She is untouchable. She is not looking for someone like you." But the reminders were getting harder to believe. The annual Apex Creative Charity Gala was the kind of event Daniel had only ever read about. The kind where people wore designer clothes and drank champagne that cost more than his car payment and made small talk about investments and vacation homes like those were normal things to discuss. He felt completely out of place the moment he walked through the door. The venue was a luxury hotel ballroom transformed into something out of a fairy tale. Crystal chandeliers cast golden light over everything. White roses spilled from towering arrangements on every table. A live orchestra played something classical and elegant in the corner, while servers in black tie circulated with silver trays of hors d'oeuvres he could not pronounce. Daniel tugged at the collar of his rented tuxedo and wondered what he was doing here. He spotted familiar faces from the office scattered throughout the crowd. Account managers chatting up clients. Creative directors networking with industry contacts. Miranda Blake holding court near the bar, her sharp eyes scanning the room like a predator looking for prey. And then Scarlett made her entrance. The crowd seemed to part for her, without anyone consciously moving, like she had some kind of magnetic field that rearranged everything in her path. She wore a dress that stole Daniel's breath and refused to give it back. It was red, deep, rich scarlet that matched her name and clung to her body in ways that were technically appropriate but felt anything but. The gown was floor length with an off-shoulder neckline that revealed delicate collarbones and smooth, pale skin. Her blonde hair was down tonight, falling in loose waves past her shoulders instead of its usual sleek ponytail, and diamond earrings caught the light every time she moved. She was devastating. There was no other word for it. Daniel watched her work the room from his position near the wall, too intimidated to approach, but unable to look away. She moved from group to group with practiced ease, laughing at the right moments, touching arms at the right times, commanding attention without ever seeming to demand it. But something was off. He noticed it because he had spent months learning to read her subtle cues. The champagne glass in her hand was refilled too frequently. Her laugh was a little too loud, a little too bright. And whenever she thought no one was watching, her smile flickered like a candle fighting to stay lit. She is quite something, is she not? Daniel startled. Miranda had appeared beside him, champagne in hand, wearing a silver dress that probably cost a fortune, but somehow made her look older instead of elegant. Scarlett Miranda clarified, nodding toward their CEO. Every man in this room is watching her. But I wonder if any of them see what is really there. What do you mean? Miranda smiled that smile that never reached her eyes. Just an observation. Our fearless leader is not quite as invincible as she pretends to be. She sipped her champagne. Though I wonder if the board would agree that her interest in you is purely professional. Daniel stiffened. I do not know what you are implying. Do you not? Miranda's voice was silk wrapped around steel. Scarlett has worked too hard to throw it all away on an office romance. And you with your daughter to consider, it would be a shame if things got complicated. Before Daniel could respond, Scarlett materialized beside them like she had sensed the conversation. Daniel, the Hendersons were asking about you, she said smoothly. They loved your work on their campaign. Miranda, I believe the CFO was looking for you earlier. It was a dismissal politely wrapped but unmistakable. Miranda's smile tightened as she excused herself, and Daniel felt a chill run down his spine that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. What was that about? Scarlett asked quietly. Nothing good, Daniel replied. She is fishing for something to use against you. Let her try. Scarlett's expression hardened. I have dealt with worse than Miranda Blake. But later that evening, when Daniel found her alone on the balcony overlooking the city, the confident CEO was nowhere to be seen. The balcony was quiet, sheltered from the noise of the party by heavy glass doors, and Scarlett stood at the railing, with her back to him, another champagne glass in her hand. Her shoulders were shaking, and Daniel realized with a start that she was crying. Scarlett. She turned quickly, swiping at her face with the back of her hand. Daniel, I did not hear you come out. Are you okay? I am fine. Her voice cracked on the lie. Just needed some air. Daniel moved closer, leaning against the railing beside her. The city stretched out below them, a sea of lights that seemed to go on forever. Up here, the world felt smaller somehow, more intimate. You do not have to pretend with me, he said quietly. I know what it looks like when someone is just surviving. Scarlett laughed, but it was bitter. Is it that obvious? Only because I have been there myself. She was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the lights. When she spoke again, her voice was softer than he had ever heard it. Everyone down there sees the CEO, the success story, the woman who built something from nothing. She took a long drink of champagne. They do not see how exhausting it is, how lonely. I have spent so many years climbing that I forgot to look around and notice there is no one climbing with me. Daniel's heart ached for her. He knew that loneliness. He lived it every day. I see you, he said, the words coming out before he could stop them. Not the CEO. You. Scarlett turned to look at him then, and the walls he had watched her build and rebuild for months seemed to crumble. Her eyes were wet with tears and champagne, but something in them was more real than anything he had seen from her before. She moved closer. Her hand found his face, her fingers cold from the glass she had been holding. And then she was leaning in her lips, heading toward his, with champagne-sweetened breath. Daniel wanted to kiss her. He wanted it so badly. His whole body ached with the wanting. But she was drunk. He could see it in the slight unfocus of her eyes, feel it in the way she swayed against him. And whatever was happening between them, he would not let it happen like this. Scarlett. He caught her face in his hands, gently, stopping her forward motion. You are not yourself right now. Confusion flickered across her features, then embarrassment, then something that looked like devastation. She pulled back sharply, her cheeks flushing red. Oh God, she whispered. I am so sorry. I do not know what I was. I have to go. And before he could say anything else, she was gone, fleeing back through the glass doors and disappearing into the crowd, leaving Daniel standing alone on the balcony, with his heart pounding and his lips aching for a kiss that never happened. Daniel did not sleep that night. He lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying those moments on the balcony until they were burned into his memory like a brand. The way she had looked at him, the vulnerability in her eyes, the feeling of her fingers on his face, and the way she had run from him like he was something to be ashamed of. By the time the sun rose Monday morning, he had convinced himself that the only option was resignation. He could not work with Scarlett after what had happened. He could not sit in her office for weekly meetings and pretend that she had not almost kissed him, that he had not wanted her to. It was impossible. He drafted a resignation letter before Emma even woke up. Then he deleted it. Then he drafted another one. Then he deleted that one too. By the time he arrived at the office, his stomach was in knots, and his resignation speech was polished to perfection in his mind. Morning, Daniel. He froze mid-step. Scarlett was walking past him, coffee cup in hand, her hair back in its sleek ponytail, and her expression completely unreadable. She did not pause, did not make eye contact, did not acknowledge in any way that anything unusual had transpired between them. It was like Friday night had never happened. Daniel watched her disappear into her office, confusion replacing his carefully rehearsed resolve. Did she not remember? Was she pretending? What the hell was he supposed to do now? The answer came an hour later in the form of an email summoning him to her office to discuss revisions on the Henderson presentation. He walked in to find her staring at her computer screen with the kind of intense focus that suggested she was not actually seeing anything on it. When he sat down in the chair across from her desk, she still did not look at him. Close the door, she said quietly. We need to talk. Daniel's stomach dropped. He closed the door and returned to his seat, bracing himself for whatever was coming. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The silence stretched between them, heavy with everything unsaid. Then Scarlett took a breath and finally looked at him. What Daniel saw made his prepared resignation speech evaporate completely. She was not cold. She was not detached. She was terrified. I owe you an apology, she said, her voice so quiet he had to lean forward to hear it. I have never been so unprofessional in my entire life, and I am deeply sorry. The company party got out of hand, and I had no right to put you in that position. Daniel had prepared for many possible scenarios. cold dismissal, pretending it never happened, maybe even anger. He had not prepared for this raw honesty that made her look more human than he had ever seen her. I understand if you want to transfer departments. She continued, the words coming out in a rush, like she had practiced them. Or even leave the company entirely. I have already spoken to HR about options that would protect your position and your career. Whatever you need, I will make it happen. The silence that followed was different this time. Not awkward, but full, stuffed with everything Daniel wanted to say, but could not figure out how to put into words. What Scarlett did not know was how close he had come to kissing her back. How he had wanted to since the very first day they met, when she had looked at his family-themed designs with that unguarded expression that cracked through her perfect facade. How he lay awake at night, thinking about her green eyes and her rare laugh and the loneliness they shared. But Emma had to come first. She always had to come first. And office romances, especially with his direct superior, were complicated at best and career-ending at worst. I do not want to leave, Daniel found himself saying, instead of the resignation speech he had prepared. But I think we need clear boundaries. The relief that washed over Scarlett's face was visible, though she masked it quickly with professionalism. Absolutely, she agreed. Boundaries are essential. They spent the next few minutes discussing what those boundaries would look like. Professional meetings only. No more late nights in her office. No more conversations that drifted into personal territory. Neither of them acknowledged the electricity that still crackled between them every time their eyes met. Neither of them realized that this conversation was just the beginning of a complicated dance that would test those boundaries again and again over the coming months. And neither of them saw Miranda Blake standing just outside the office door, listening with a small, satisfied smile. 3 weeks later, Daniel found himself breaking every boundary they had carefully established. It started innocently enough. Emma was spending the weekend at Susan's house, one of their regular sleepovers that gave Daniel a chance to catch up on work, and Susan a chance to spoil her granddaughter with homemade cookies and entirely too much television. So Daniel stayed late at the office, figuring he might as well make use of the empty apartment waiting for him at home. The Westfield campaign needed attention, and the quiet of the after-hours office was better for focusing than his living room with its memories and distractions. He was deep in a design problem when footsteps made him look up. Scarlett stood in his doorway, jacket off and sleeves rolled up in a way he had never seen her at the office. It made her look younger somehow, more approachable. Still here, she asked, leaning against the doorframe. Emma is at her grandmother's for the weekend, he explained. Figured I would get ahead on Westfield. She nodded, hesitating in a way that was unlike her. She was always so certain, so decisive. This uncertainty was new. Have you eaten? She finally asked. I was about to order something. The invitation hung in the air between them, unspoken but obvious. This was dangerous territory. This was exactly the kind of situation they had silently agreed to avoid. Yet somehow, Daniel found himself saying yes. 20 minutes later, they were sitting on the floor of her office, with takeout containers spread between them, the formality of desk and chairs abandoned for something more intimate. The city lights glittered through the floor-to-ceiling windows, and the empty building wrapped around them like a cocoon. They talked about the Westfield campaign, at first safe professional territory. But as the containers emptied and the conversation flowed, the walls started coming down. Scarlett told him things he had never heard from her before. About growing up in foster care, bounced from home to home after her parents died in a house fire when she was 7. About learning to rely only on herself because no one else could be trusted. About working her way through college while sleeping in her car some nights because she could not afford both tuition and rent. 14 different foster homes in 11 years. She said, her voice matter of fact, in the way of someone who had made peace with their pain. You learn pretty quickly that the only person you can count on is yourself. She shrugged. That is why I'm so good at being alone. I have had a lifetime of practice. Daniel listened without interrupting, understanding more than she probably realized. He knew what it was like to have the rug pulled out from under you. He knew what it was like to rebuild from nothing. You do not have to be alone, he said quietly. The words came out before he could think better of them. Scarlett looked at him, then really looked at him, and for a moment all her carefully constructed walls seemed transparent. That is the terrifying part, she admitted. For the first time in my life, I am not sure I want to be. The air between them changed, charged with something neither of them was ready to name. Daniel knew he should say something to break the tension, to steer them back to safe ground. But he could not seem to find the words. What about you? Scarlett asked, her voice softer now. Lily's mother. What happened? The question hung in the air, heavy with the weight of everything Daniel usually kept locked away. He had not talked about Rachel to anyone outside of family since the funeral. But something about this moment, about Scarlett's raw honesty and the intimacy of the empty office, made him want to try. Her name was Rachel, he began, and even saying it felt like reopening a wound. Car accident 3 years ago. Emma was just 2. Scarlett's hand reached out and touched his, just briefly, just enough to let him know she was there. I'm sorry, she said softly. That must have been unimaginable. Some days it still is. The words came easier now. She had this way of making everything better just by being in the room. And when she was gone, I did not know how to exist in the world without her. He told her about the phone call that shattered everything, about standing in the hospital, holding a toddler who kept asking for mama, about the 6 months of going through motions while feeling absolutely nothing inside, about learning to be both parents at once while grieving alone because there was no one to share the burden. When he finished, the silence was not uncomfortable. It was the kind of silence that happened between two people who had seen each other's darkest corners and chosen not to look away. You tell her the truth, Scarlett said, finally, about her mother, in ways she can understand. That is all any of us can do. Their eyes met, and Daniel felt something shift between them, something deeper than attraction, more complex than friendship, something that scared him more than anything had in 3 years. Then his phone buzzed with a text from Susan about Emma, and the spell shattered. I should go, he said, standing abruptly. The moment was too much, too real, too dangerous. Scarlett nodded, gathering the empty containers with movements that seemed suddenly mechanical. Of course, she agreed. See you Monday, Daniel. As he drove home through the empty streets, Daniel could not shake the feeling that despite their best intentions, the boundaries they had established were already beginning to crumble, and he was not entirely sure he wanted to stop them. The meeting was not supposed to happen. Daniel had been careful, so careful, to keep his work life and his home life completely separate. Scarlett was his boss. Emma was his world. And those two worlds had no business overlapping. But the universe, it seemed, had other plans. It was a Saturday afternoon, 2 weeks after their late-night conversation, and Daniel was in the backyard with Emma helping her arrange her ever-growing rock collection. She had gotten very serious about the project lately, sorting stones by color and size, and what she called their magical properties. "This one is for making wishes," she explained, holding up a smooth pink quartz. "And this one protects you from bad dreams. And this sparkly one tells you when someone is lying." "That is quite a system," Daniel said, genuinely impressed by the elaborate mythology she had constructed. He was so focused on his daughter that he almost missed the sound of a car pulling into the driveway. Almost missed the click of heels on pavement. Almost missed Scarlett Morgan walking around the side of his house with a folder of contracts in her hand. Scarlett froze when she saw them. Emma looked up with wide, curious eyes, and Daniel felt his heart stop beating for a full 3 seconds. "I'm so sorry," Scarlett said quickly. "I should have called. The Westfield contracts needed your signature before Monday, and I was in the neighborhood, so I thought I would just drop them off." "I did not mean to interrupt." "It is fine," Daniel managed, though his voice sounded strangled even to his own ears. "Emma, this is Miss Morgan. She is Daddy's boss at work." But Emma was already standing studying Scarlett with the intense scrutiny that only children can manage without being rude. "You are very pretty," she announced, "like the princess in my fairy tale book." Something shifted in Scarlett's expression. The polished CEO softened into something more human, more vulnerable. "Thank you," she said, and her voice was different too. Warmer. "That is the nicest thing anyone has said to me in a long time." Emma, apparently deciding that Scarlett had passed some kind of test, gestured toward her rock collection. "Do you want to see my rocks? Each one has a special power. Daddy helps me find them." Daniel opened his mouth to make an excuse to preserve the boundaries he had worked so hard to maintain. But Scarlett was already crouching down to Emma's level, her designer suit apparently forgotten, as she knelt in the grass. "I would love to see them," she said. "Tell me about this one." What followed was 30 minutes of Emma explaining her entire collection in exhaustive detail. The purple one from the beach trip for her birthday, the smooth grey one from the playground that was definitely magical, the tiny white one that looked like a tooth but was actually a wishing stone, and this one, Emma said, holding up a pale pink rock with the reverence usually reserved for holy relics. This was Mommy's favorite color, pink like roses. Scarlett's breath caught. Daniel watched her face, saw the emotion she was trying to hide, and felt something break open in his chest. "Your mommy had beautiful taste," Scarlett said quietly. "She is in heaven now." Emma said it the way children do, matter of fact and accepting of things they cannot change. "I draw pictures of her, so I do not forget what she looks like." Then before Daniel could intervene, before he could redirect the conversation to safer territory, Emma took Scarlett's hand. "Do you want to see them?" "My pictures of Mommy." Daniel's heart stopped. Emma had not shown those drawings to anyone outside of family. Not her teachers, not her friends, not the babysitter who had been coming for months. Those drawings were sacred, private, protected, and she was offering to share them with his boss. He looked at Scarlett, trying to communicate with his eyes that she did not have to do this, that she could make an excuse and leave. But Scarlett was looking at Emma with an expression that made his throat tight. "I would be honored," she said. Emma led her inside by the hand, chattering about which picture was her favorite and which one she had drawn just last week, and how Daddy helped her spell Mummy's name in the corner of each one. Daniel followed them into the house, watching as his daughter pulled out the special folder where she kept her drawings and spread them across the coffee table for Scarlett to see. There were dozens of them. Crayon pictures of a smiling woman with brown hair and blue eyes. Mommy in heaven with angel wings. Mommy holding Emma's hand. Mommy watching over them from a cloud shaped like a heart. Scarlett looked at each one carefully, asking Emma questions about the details, listening to the stories behind the drawings with genuine attention. And when Daniel saw tears threatening to spill from those green eyes, she usually kept so guarded he felt his last defenses crumble. "She is wonderful, Emma," whispered to him when Scarlett was distracted by a particularly elaborate drawing. "Can she come back and play again?" "We will see, sweetheart," Daniel said, because he did not know what else to say. Later, after Emma had been successfully distracted by cartoons, and Scarlett was standing on his porch gathering her things to leave, the air between them felt different, heavier, more real. "Your daughter is extraordinary," Scarlett said softly. "You have done an amazing job with her." "She does not warm up to people easily," Daniel replied, the words coming out before he could stop them. "Not since her mom. She has not shown anyone those drawings in 3 years. The significance hung between them, unspoken but understood. "I should go," Scarlett said, but she did not move. "We need to be careful, Daniel. I'm still your boss." "I know." But the way he said it made clear that the professional distinction was becoming increasingly meaningless. They stood there for a long moment, two people on the edge of something neither of them was ready to name. Then Scarlett turned and walked to her car, and Daniel watched her drive away, with the certainty that nothing between them would ever be the same. The Westfield campaign became their shared obsession, a project that required late nights and weekend work sessions, and the kind of close collaboration that made maintaining boundaries almost impossible. On paper, it was the biggest account Apex Creative had landed in years. A complete rebrand for a national retail chain involving everything from new logo designs to marketing strategy to a multi-platform advertising campaign. The kind of project that could make careers or break them. In reality, it was an excuse for Daniel and Scarlett to spend hours together without anyone questioning their proximity. They worked in her office with the door open, maintaining the appearance of professionalism, while the air between them crackled with something decidedly unprofessional. They debated color palettes and font choices and target demographics, but their conversations kept drifting into other territory. Books they had read, music they loved, dreams they had abandoned, and the ones they still clung to. The office noticed. Of course it noticed. Daniel caught the whispered conversations that stopped when he walked by. the knowing looks exchanged between colleagues. The way Miranda Blake watched them with those calculating eyes cataloging every interaction like she was building a case file. "She is in over her head," Miranda said loudly enough for Daniel to hear as he passed her desk one afternoon. "The CEO thinking with her heart instead of her head. It never ends well." Daniel pretended not to hear, but the words stayed with him. Was that what this was? Scarlett thinking with her heart? Or was it something else, something deeper? Something that scared them both so much they could not look at it directly. In meetings, their dynamic had shifted in ways that were hard to hide. Scarlett sought Daniel's opinion before anyone else's turning to him, with questions that she already knew the answers to, just to hear his perspective. They communicated without words, sometimes a raised eyebrow or a slight nod conveying more than whole sentences. The Henderson clients noticed. During a presentation, commenting afterward that they had rarely seen such natural partnership between a CEO and her team. Daniel had smiled politely while his heart raced at the word partnership. Partnership. As if they were equals. As if the power dynamic that had defined their relationship from the beginning was dissolving into something new. Late at night, after Emma was asleep and the house was quiet, Daniel lay awake thinking about Scarlett, in ways he knew he should not. The way she laughed when she forgot to be guarded. The way she bit her lip when she was concentrating on a design problem. The way her voice softened when she asked about Emma. He was falling for her. He knew it felt it happening like watching a car crash in slow motion. And he had no idea how to stop it. Or if he even wanted to. What Daniel had not anticipated was how quickly Emma would fall for Scarlett too. It started with small things. Scarlett stopping by the house to drop off documents that could have easily been emailed. Bringing groceries, because she was passing the store anyway. Finding excuses to visit that became thinner and more transparent with each passing week. And Emma loved every minute of it. "Scarlett is coming today," she would announce in the morning, as if she had some kind of sixth sense about when visits were likely. "I'm going to show her my new rock, the green one that grants wishes." Daniel would remind her that Scarlett was very busy, that she might not be able to come today. But Emma's certainty never wavered. And more often than not, she was right. Scarlett seemed drawn to their little house, the same way Daniel was drawn to her office. She would arrive with some professional excuse and end up staying for hours, teaching Emma to make paper butterflies, or reading bedtime stories in silly voices, or helping with kindergarten art projects that got progressively more elaborate. "Look what Scarlett showed me," Emma would report breathlessly after each visit. Scarlett said, "My drawing was beautiful." Scarlett knows how to make flowers out of napkins. Scarlett is the best at reading princess voices. The word Scarlett appeared in Emma's vocabulary more and more frequently, replacing generic terms like daddy's friend from work with something more specific and more intimate. Susan noticed on one of her regular visits her sharp eyes taking in the new drawings on the refrigerator and the paper butterflies Emma had carefully arranged on her bedroom shelf. Emma seems quite attached to this Scarlett person, she observed as Daniel made tea in the kitchen. "Your boss, is she not?" "She has been very kind to us," Daniel said carefully. "Emma adores her." "And you?" Susan's voice was gentle but probing. "How do you feel about her?" Daniel did not answer right away. He measured the tea, poured the water, arranged the cups on a tray, with movements that were automatic and gave him time to think. I do not know, he admitted finally. It is complicated. Rachel would want you to be happy, Susan said, and the words hit Daniel like a physical blow. She would not want you spending the rest of your life alone, locked away from love because you are afraid of what you might lose. I have Emma, Daniel replied. She is all I need. Susan smiled sadly. That is what I told myself after Rachel was born. That my children were enough. That I did not need anything else. But children grow up, Daniel. They need you less and less as the years pass. And then, one day, you wake up and realize you have been so busy protecting your heart that you forgot to live. She put her hand over his, her touch warm and familiar. Keeping your heart locked away is not honoring Rachel's memory, she said. It is hiding from life. And that is not what she would have wanted for you. Daniel blinked back tears he had not expected. Susan had been his mother-in-law for nearly a decade, his rock in the years since Rachel's death. She had never pushed him toward moving on, never suggested he should be ready before he was ready. The fact that she was saying this now meant something. What if I make a mistake? He asked, his voice rough. What if Emma gets attached to someone who leaves and she loses another mother figure? Then you help her through it, Susan replied. The same way you helped her through losing Rachel. You cannot protect her from every possible hurt, Daniel. All you can do is love her and be there when the hurts come. Emma burst into the kitchen, then demanding to know if she could call Scarlett and invite her for dinner, and the moment passed. But Susan's words stayed with Daniel, echoing in his mind late at night, when he lay awake thinking about everything he was afraid to want. While Daniel struggled with his feelings and Scarlett struggled with hers, Miranda Blake was doing something far more calculated. She had been watching them for months now, documenting every interaction with the meticulous attention of someone building a legal case. The late nights, they both stayed at the office. The times Scarlett visited Daniel's desk when email would have sufficed. The way their eyes met in meetings, communicating wordlessly in ways that excluded everyone else. Miranda kept her own counsel, sharing her observations with no one, because she understood something that most people never learn. Information was only valuable when deployed at the right moment. And the right moment had not arrived yet. But it would. She was certain of that. 15 years she had given to this company. 15 years of late nights and sacrificed relationships and loyalty that had gone completely unrewarded. She had been the obvious choice for CEO when the position opened up 3 years ago. She had the experience, the relationships, the institutional knowledge that no outsider could match. But the board had chosen Scarlett instead. Younger, flashier, brought in from outside because they wanted fresh blood and bold vision and all the other buzzwords that really meant they did not value what Miranda had built. 3 years later, Miranda's resentment had curdled into something darker. Something that tasted like vengeance. She cultivated relationships with board members, subtle and strategic. Coffee meetings that seemed casual, but always steered toward concerns about company direction. Lunch conversations that planted seeds of doubt about Scarlett's judgment. Small comments that accumulated over time, like water wearing away stone. I'm sure it is nothing she would say innocently. But has anyone else noticed how much time our CEO spends with that new designer, the one she hired personally, it just seems like there might be a conflict of interest there, if you know what I mean. The board members listened. They always listened, because Miranda had spent years making herself indispensable, the steady presence who remembered everything and forgot nothing, who could always be relied upon to have the company's best interests at heart. Now she was using that trust to destroy the woman who had taken what should have been hers. The charity gala had been a gift. Watching Scarlett drink too much, watching her disappear onto the balcony with Daniel watching her return, flushed and flustered and making hasty excuses to leave. Miranda had documented all of it, adding it to her file like a prosecutor building a case. But she was patient. She could afford to be patient, because she knew that eventually Scarlett and Daniel would make a mistake that was too big to ignore. And when they did, Miranda would be ready. The call came at 2:47 in the morning on a Friday night. Daniel was already awake, unable to sleep, his mind churning with thoughts of Scarlett and Emma and the impossible situation he had gotten himself into. When his phone rang, the sound slicing through the darkness like a blade. His heart stopped before he even saw the caller ID. It was Susan, and she was hysterical. "Daniel, something is wrong with Emma." Her voice was shaking so badly he could barely understand her. "Her fever came out of nowhere. 104 degrees. She started having convulsions. The ambulance is on its way, but I do not know what to do. She keeps asking for you." Daniel was out of bed before she finished speaking. He did not remember getting dressed or grabbing his keys or running to his car. All he remembered was the terror cold and absolute flooding through his veins like ice water. Not Emma. Please God, not Emma. He drove faster than he should have, running red lights and ignoring speed limits, his vision blurring with tears he could not stop. The last time he had rushed to a hospital in the middle of the night, Rachel had already been gone by the time he arrived. He could not lose Emma too. He could not survive it. The hospital was the same one where Rachel had died. The irony was not lost on him as he sprinted through the emergency room doors, scanning frantically for his daughter's face. "Mr. Hayes." A nurse intercepted him, her expression carefully professional. "Your daughter is stable. The doctor will be out to speak with you in a few minutes." Stable. The word should have been reassuring, but all Daniel heard was "not dead." She was not dead. Yet. He found Susan in the waiting room, looking older than he had ever seen her, her face streaked with tears and her hands still shaking. "I am so sorry," she kept saying. "I do not know what happened. She was fine when I put her to bed, and then I heard her crying, and when I went in, she was burning up and shaking, and I did not know what to do." "It is not your fault," Daniel said, even though he could barely form words. "These things happen. You did everything right. You called for help." But his reassurances felt hollow, meaningless sounds he was making while his entire world hung in the balance. He did not know how long he sat there. Time had ceased to mean anything. Susan went to find coffee she would not drink, and Daniel was left alone, with his terror imagining every worst-case scenario his mind could conjure. And then, without conscious thought, he reached for his phone and called Scarlett. She answered on the second ring, her voice groggy with sleep. "Daniel." "What is wrong?" "It is Emma." He could barely get the words out. She's at the hospital. There was a seizure. I do not know what is happening. I do not know what to do. Which hospital, he told her. And then, because he could not help himself, he added, I am sorry for calling. I do not know why I did. You do not have to come. I am already getting dressed, she replied. I will be there in 20 minutes. She made it in 15. Daniel looked up when the waiting room doors burst open, and there was scarlet hair, disheveled face, bare of makeup, wearing sweatpants and an old sweater that made her look nothing like the polished CEO he saw every day. She was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. She did not say anything. She just sat down beside him and took his hand, holding on tight, and the simple contact was enough to keep him from falling apart completely. The hours that followed were a blur of doctors and updates and medical terminology that Daniel could barely process. Febrile seizure, they said, caused by a severe ear infection that had spiked Emma's temperature dangerously high. Scary, but ultimately treatable. They were starting antibiotics and monitoring her closely, and she should make a full recovery. Through all of it, Scarlett never left his side. She brought him terrible coffee from the vending machine and made him eat a granola bar, even though the thought of food made him nauseous. She asked the doctors questions when Daniel was too overwhelmed to speak. She was his anchor when everything else felt like it was spinning out of control. Finally, around 6 in the morning, they let him see Emma. She was tiny in the hospital bed, surrounded by machines that beeped and whirred an IV line running into her small arm. Her curly brown hair was tangled against the pillow, and her face was still flushed with fever, but her eyes fluttered open when he approached. Daddy, I am here, baby. Daniel gathered her small hand in both of his. I'm right here. I'm not going anywhere. Emma's gaze drifted past him to the doorway where Scarlett stood uncertainly, clearly unsure whether she should intrude on this moment. Scarlett. Emma's voice was weak, but unmistakably pleased. You came. Daniel watched Scarlett's composure crack, watched tears spill down her face that she did not bother to wipe away. Of course I came, sweetheart, she said, her voice thick with emotion. Of course I did. Will you stay? Emma asked, and her small hand reached out towards Scarlett. Mommy always stayed with me when I was sick. The significance of the words hung in the air. Emma had not compared anyone to her mother in 3 years. She had not allowed anyone that close, not since the day she learned that Mommy was never coming home. And now she was asking Scarlett to stay. Daniel looked at Scarlett, saw the question in her eyes, and nodded. She crossed the room and sat carefully on the edge of Emma's bed, taking the small hand that was offered. Her other hand moved to stroke Emma's tangled hair with a gentleness that made Daniel's chest ache. I will stay as long as you need me, Scarlett promised softly, as long as you want me here. Emma's eyes fluttered closed, exhaustion and medication pulling her back towards sleep. Promise, she whispered. I promise. Daniel watched his daughter, who had not trusted any woman since her mother died, fall asleep holding Scarlett's hand. And he knew with absolute certainty that everything between them had changed. He was completely, irrevocably in love with this woman, and he had no idea what to do about it. The hospital released Emma the next afternoon with antibiotics and instructions for follow-up care. Susan arrived to take her shift at bedside insisting that Daniel needed rest and that she would call immediately if anything changed. Daniel walked Scarlett to her car in the hospital parking lot, the morning sun too bright and too cheerful for how exhausted he felt. "Thank you," he said, the words inadequate for everything he wanted to express. "For coming, for staying, for everything." Scarlett looked at him with those green eyes that he had memorized over months of trying not to stare. She looked as tired as he felt, dark circles under her eyes, and her hair still messy from the night before. "You do not have to thank me," she said. "I wanted to be here." They stood beside her car in silence for a moment, the weight of the night pressing down on them both. "What if I do not care about the complications anymore?" Daniel asked, the words coming out before he could stop them. Scarlett's expression shifted. "Daniel, I'm still your boss." "I know." He stepped closer, close enough to see the pulse jumping in her throat. "But what if some things are worth the risk?" She did not step back. She did not put up her walls. She just looked at him with something raw and vulnerable in her eyes. "Do you feel it too?" Daniel pressed. "This thing between us that is more than attraction, more than friendship. Do you feel it? Or am I imagining everything?" "Of course I feel it." Her voice cracked on the admission. "I have been feeling it for months. I do not know how to do this, Daniel. Everyone I have ever loved has left. My parents died. Every foster family gave me up. Every relationship I have tried has ended with someone walking away." "I'm not going to walk away," Daniel said. "You do not know that. You cannot promise that." "No." He reached out and took her hands in his, her fingers cold against his palms. "I cannot promise that nothing bad will ever happen. Life does not work that way, and we both know it. But I can promise that I'm not afraid of what we might build together." Scarlett was crying now, tears sliding silently down her cheeks. "I have already lost the love of my life." Once Daniel continued, his voice rough with emotion. "I know how to survive loss, but I also know that playing it safe is not the same as living. Rachel would not want me hiding from love for the rest of my life. And I do not want to spend the rest of my life wondering what might have happened if I had been brave enough to try." He squeezed her hands. "I am not asking for guarantees. I am just asking for a chance. For both of us to stop being so afraid." Scarlett looked at him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then she gently pulled her hands free. "I need to think," she said quietly. "This is a lot, and I am exhausted, and I do not want to say something I will regret." "Of course." Daniel stepped back, giving her space. "Take all the time you need." She got in her car and drove away without looking back, and Daniel watched until her taillights disappeared around the corner, wondering if he had just made the biggest mistake of his life, or the best decision he had ever made. Monday morning arrived with a summons to human resources. Daniel walked into the sterile conference room with his stomach in knots, already knowing somehow that whatever was about to happen would not be good. The HR director, a serious woman named Patricia, was waiting with a thick folder open in front of her, and an expression that suggested she would rather be anywhere else. "Mr. Hayes, please sit down." He sat. "A formal complaint has been filed," Patricia said, her voice carefully neutral. "It alleges an inappropriate relationship between yourself and Victoria Morgan that has created a hostile work environment for other employees. Daniel felt the blood drain from his face. What that is not? No! There is nothing inappropriate happening. Patricia held up a hand. I am not making accusations. I am informing you of the complaint and the process that will follow. Until the investigation is complete, Ms. Morgan has been temporarily removed from any direct supervision of your work. You will report to the creative director instead. Who filed this complaint? Patricia's expression flickered. That information is confidential. But Daniel already knew. Miranda had finally made her move. The days that followed were a nightmare. The office buzzed with rumors that spread faster than he could track them. Colleagues who had been friendly suddenly avoided his desk. Conversations stopped when he entered rooms. He could feel eyes on him everywhere he went, judging, speculating, condemning. Scarlett was conspicuously absent from meetings, her authority stripped away by the investigation that painted them both as guilty until proven innocent. Daniel felt like he was drowning. They met in secret at a coffee shop far from the office, both wearing baseball caps and sitting in a corner booth like criminals hiding from the law. I'm so sorry, Daniel said. This is exactly what you were afraid of. It is not your fault. Scarlett's face was pale dark circles under her eyes, suggesting she had slept about as well as he had. Miranda has been waiting for any opportunity. If it was not this, it would have been something else. I could resign. The words hurt to say, but he meant them. Find another job somewhere else. Remove myself from the equation. Absolutely not. Scarlett's voice was firm despite her exhaustion. That would only make it look like we have something to hide. Do we? Daniel asked quietly. Have something to hide. Scarlett was silent for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. Nothing has happened between us. Not really. We have not acted on anything. But we both know there is something there, Daniel said. We have known for months. Knowing and acting are different things. Scarlett wrapped her hands around her coffee cup like she was trying to absorb its warmth. The question is, what we want to do about it. What we are willing to risk. Before Daniel could answer, his phone buzzed with a text from the babysitter. Emma was home from school with a stomach ache. Probably just anxiety from the hospital visit, but she was asking for her daddy. I have to go, he said, standing abruptly. She needs me. Go. Scarlett nodded. We will figure this out. We have to. But as Daniel drove home, with his mind racing and his heart aching, he was not sure there was anything left to figure out. 2 weeks into the investigation, Daniel discovered his daughter crying on the school playground. He had arrived early for pickup, wanting to surprise her, and had found her sitting alone on a bench while other children played around her, ignored and isolated in a way that made his chest constrict with protective fury. What happened? He crouched down beside her, wiping tears from her cheeks with his thumb. Why are you crying, sweetheart? Emma hiccuped, her small body shaking with sobs she was trying to suppress. The mommies were talking, she managed finally. About you and your boss. They said mean things, Daddy. They said you were in trouble, and that it was because of some lady, and that it served you right for doing something bad. Daniel felt rage rise up in him, hot and bitter. Rage at the gossiping parents. Rage at Miranda for starting this. Rage at himself for letting his daughter become collateral damage in a war she did not even understand. Sweetheart, listen to me. He took her small face in his hands, forcing her to meet his eyes. I did not do anything bad. Some people like to talk about things they do not understand, and sometimes they say things that are not true. But why would they say it if it was not true because they are jealous, or bored, or just not very nice? Daniel smoothed her tangled curls back from her face. You know what kind of person Daddy is. You know I would never do anything to hurt you or anyone else. Emma nodded slowly, but the doubt in her eyes did not completely fade. Are you going to get in trouble? She asked quietly. Is something bad going to happen? Daniel wanted to promise her that everything would be fine. He wanted to wrap her in certainty and protection and keep her safe from all the ugliness of the adult world. But he had learned a long time ago that lying to your children, even with good intentions, only made things worse. I do not know what is going to happen, he admitted. But I promise I will always be here for you, no matter what. That is never going to change. That night, after Emma was finally asleep, Daniel sat alone in his kitchen with a glass of whiskey. He would not drink, and a decision he did not want to make. Emma had been hurt today. His little girl, who had already lost her mother and survived a terrifying hospital visit, had been hurt because of his feelings for Scarlett. Because he had been selfish enough to want something for himself. He could not let that happen again. At midnight, he drafted his resignation letter. Effective, immediately citing personal reasons. He would find another job, even if it meant starting over from scratch. Even if it meant giving up the career he had built and the woman he loved. Emma had to come first. He had made a promise to Rachel, and he would not break it. He drove to Scarlett's apartment with the letter in his hand and determination in his heart. When she opened the door, he could see immediately that she had been crying. Her eyes were red and swollen, her composure completely shattered. The board called an emergency meeting for tomorrow morning, she said without preamble. They are considering asking for my resignation. Daniel felt the ground shift beneath his feet. Because of me. Because of us. Because Miranda convinced them that my judgment is compromised. Scarlett let him, in her voice hollow. She has been working on this for months, gathering support, building her case. Our friendship just gave her the ammunition she needed. I came to give you this. Daniel held out the envelope. My resignation. It is the only way to protect your position. Scarlett took the envelope, read the letter silently. Then, to his shock, she tore it in half. No. Victoria, this is the only way. I have to step back. No. She said it again, firmer this time. I'm not letting you sacrifice your career for me. I am done letting fear dictate my life. She moved closer, and he saw something in her eyes he had never seen before. Not vulnerability, but strength. The kind of strength that came from finally deciding to stop running. 4 years I have put this company above everything, she said. My personal life, my happiness, any chance at real connection. I told myself it was the price of success. But what is the point of success if I end up alone? It does not have to be that way, Daniel said softly. I know that now. She took his hands in hers, her grip surprisingly strong. Tomorrow I am going to tell the board that while there has been no impropriety between us, I am recusing myself from directly managing your work going forward. Not because we have done anything wrong, but because I want the freedom to explore what might be right. And if they do not accept that, then I will know this is not a company I want to lead anymore. Her voice was steady, certain. Some things matter more than titles or corner offices. Daniel stared at her, hardly daring to believe what he was hearing. Are you sure this is everything you have worked for? You are more important, Scarlett said simply. You and Emma. I did not realize how much I was missing until you two came into my life. And I'm not willing to give that up. Not for Miranda, not for the board, not for anyone. In that moment, with no alcohol to blame and no professional pretense between them, Daniel did what he had wanted to do for months. He kissed her. It started gentle, tentative, like a question being asked. But when she responded, when her arms came around his neck and she pressed herself against him, it became something else entirely. All the emotion they had been holding back, all the longing and fear and hope poured out between them in a kiss that felt like coming home. When they finally pulled apart, both of them were crying. I thought you said if I were sober you would make the first move, Scarlett whispered. I just did, Daniel replied, pulling her close again. The board meeting the next morning was held in the large conference room on the top floor, the one with the mahogany table and the leather chairs and the floor-to-ceiling windows that made everyone feel like they were being judged by the entire city. Scarlett walked in with her head high and her shoulders back, looking every inch the CEO, despite the turmoil she had to be feeling inside. She had called Daniel that morning to tell him not to worry that she had a plan, but he had come to the office anyway. He needed to be close even if he could not be in the room. Miranda was already seated at the table when Scarlett entered, her expression carefully composed into something that looked like concern, but was really barely concealed triumph. The board members were there too, a collection of suits and serious faces that held Scarlett's fate in their hands. Thank you all for coming, the board chairman said. We are here to address some concerning allegations about leadership conduct. Scarlett, I believe you wanted to speak first. Scarlett stood and her voice was steady as a rock when she began. I appreciate the opportunity to address these concerns directly. She looked around the table, meeting each board member's eyes. Yes, Daniel Hayes and I have developed a personal connection over the past several months. We have shared conversations, spent time together outside of work, and yes, we have feelings for each other. A murmur rippled around the table. Miranda leaned forward with predatory interest. However, Scarlett continued, nothing inappropriate has occurred between us. There has been no romantic relationship, no physical involvement, and no decisions made on the basis of personal feelings rather than professional merit. Daniel earned his position through his talent and his work ethic, and I stand by every evaluation I have given him. She paused, letting her words sink in. That said, I recognize that the appearance of impropriety can be as damaging as actual impropriety, which is why I am proposing a restructure. Daniel will report to the creative director, going forward, removing any conflict of interest. I will recuse myself from any decisions involving his employment evaluation or compensation. And if we decide that is not sufficient, Miranda asked, her voice dripping with false concern. Then I will accept whatever decision this board makes. Scarlett's gaze landed on Miranda with laser focus. But I would ask the board to consider the source of these allegations and to look at the full context of the situation. What do you mean by that? The chairman asked. Before Scarlett could answer, the conference room door opened and Patricia from HR entered, looking slightly flustered. I apologize for the interruption, she said, but something has come to my attention that the board needs to hear. She placed the folder on the table. Over the past 2 weeks, my department has received multiple complaints from employees regarding Miranda Blake. Complaints about harassment, manipulation, and creating hostile work environments for anyone she perceives as a threat. That is ridiculous, Miranda snapped. This is clearly retaliation. These complaints span the past several years. Patricia continued calmly. We did not act on them previously because employees were afraid to go on record. But in light of the current situation, several have come forward to provide documented evidence. The board members exchanged glances. The chairman reached for the folder. This is a witch hunt, Miranda said, her composure finally cracking. She planted this to distract from her own misconduct. My misconduct. Scarlett's voice was ice. I have dedicated the past 3 years of my life to this company. I have grown revenue by 40%, expanded into new markets, and built a team that wins awards. What exactly have you contributed, Miranda? The question hung in the air like a blade. This is not about me, Miranda sputtered. It has always been about you. Scarlett's voice was calm but devastating. You have been trying to undermine me since the day I was hired. You wanted the CEO position, and when you did not get it, you decided to destroy whoever did. The board chairman had been reading through the folder, his expression growing increasingly grim. These are serious allegations, he said, finally looking at Miranda. Very serious. I think we need to adjourn this meeting and conduct a thorough review of all complaints. You cannot be serious, Miranda said. But her voice had lost its edge. Fear was creeping in. I am completely serious. The chairman closed the folder. Miranda, you are suspended pending investigation. Scarlett, your proposed restructure is accepted. This meeting is adjourned. Miranda's face went white, then red. Then she stood abruptly and left the room without another word, slamming the door behind her. The board members gathered their things and filtered out several of them, stopping to shake Scarlett's hand or offer words of support. When the room was finally empty, Scarlett collapsed into a chair, all her careful composure draining away. Daniel appeared in the doorway, having been waiting just outside. Is it over? He asked. It is over. She looked up at him, and despite everything, she was smiling. We won. He crossed the room in 3 strides and pulled her into his arms, holding her tight, while she shook with the release of tension she had been carrying for weeks. I love you, he whispered into her hair. I should have said it before, but I was scared, and I was stupid, and I'm saying it now. I love you, Scarlett. I love you too, she whispered back. Both of you. Outside the windows, the sun was shining over the city, and for the first time in months, the future felt bright. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of change. Miranda's investigation revealed a pattern of behavior that stretched back years, a trail of manipulations and sabotage that had affected dozens of employees. 3 of her direct reports came forward with stories of bullying and harassment. 2 former employees provided evidence of campaigns she had run against previous colleagues who had been promoted above her. She resigned before the investigation was complete, citing personal reasons in a terse email that fooled no one. Daniel's new reporting structure worked seamlessly. The creative director was a woman named Janet, who appreciated his work ethic and gave him the freedom to excel. Without Miranda's constant undermining, the entire marketing department seemed to breathe easier, and Scarlett, freed from the cloud of suspicion that had hung over her, lit up with a renewed energy that inspired everyone around her. They kept their relationship quiet, at first not out of shame, but out of respect for the process. Daniel needed to prove that his success was based on merit, not favoritism. Scarlett needed to show the board that her judgment was sound. But after a few months, when the restructure was clearly working and the rumors had faded, they stopped hiding. The first time they walked into the office together, arriving at the same time from the same direction, heads turned and whispers started. But they were different whispers this time. Curious rather than cruel. Approving rather than judgmental. Janet caught Daniel's eye across the open workspace and gave him a thumbs up. Even the board chairman, who had been so serious during that tense meeting, stopped Scarlett in the hallway to offer congratulations. "You deserve to be happy," he said gruffly. "Both of you do?" 6 months after that rainy night when everything changed, Daniel and Scarlett sat on a bench at the playground, watching Emma climb the monkey bars with the confidence of a child who had nothing to fear. "She asked me something today," Scarlett said quietly, her hand finding his. "What if I was going to be her new mummy?" Daniel's breath caught. That was territory they had not explored yet, not explicitly. They had been so careful, so mindful of Emma's feelings, not wanting to rush anything or create expectations that might hurt her. "What did you tell her?" Scarlett turned to face him, her green eyes shimmering. "I told her I could not replace her real mommy," she said. "That Rachel would always be her first mommy and would always love her from heaven. But I said that hearts are bigger than we think, and there is always room for more love." Daniel felt tears, threatening. "And what did she say?" "She said," Scarlett's voice broke. "She said, 'Good, because my heart has room for you.'" They sat there for a moment, both of them crying, while Emma continued to play, oblivious to the magnitude of what had just happened. "I got offered a position at Meridian," Daniel said finally. "Creative director, my own team." Scarlett's face lit up. "That is wonderful. When do you start?" "I have not accepted yet." He squeezed her hand. "It would mean no more conflicts of interest. No more questions about our relationship affecting my work. But it is a big change." "It is." Daniel looked at his daughter, at this woman who had become so essential to both of them, at the life they were building one careful step at a time. "But I think I am ready for big changes. Whatever you decide," Scarlett said, "I support you. You know that." Daniel nodded. He did know that. It was one of the many reasons he loved her. "I do know that." He turned to face her fully, his heart pounding with what he was about to say. It is one of the many reasons I love you. The words slipped out naturally, though he had not planned to say them. Not here, not now. Scarlett's eyes widened slightly before her whole face softened into a smile. I love you too, she replied. Both of you. As Emma came running back to them, cheeks flushed with excitement, Daniel realized that sometimes the most complicated beginnings led to the most beautiful journeys. What had started with an almost kiss at a company party had become something neither of them could have anticipated. A family forming one careful step at a time. Daddy, can Scarlett come for pancakes tomorrow? Emma had climbed onto his lap, her small body warm and heavy with the exhaustion of a day well spent. Daniel looked at Scarlett, who nodded with a smile. Absolutely, sweetheart. Pancakes sound perfect. Life was not simple. It never would be. There would always be challenges, complications, moments of doubt. But sitting here with the two people who had unexpectedly become the center of his world, Daniel knew with absolute certainty that some risks were worth taking. That night, after Emma was asleep and the house was quiet, Daniel pulled Scarlett onto the porch where they had stood so many times before. The stars were out scattered across the sky like diamonds on velvet, and the air was cool with the promise of autumn. I need to ask you something, he said, his voice rough with emotion. Scarlett looked at him, her expression curious and trusting. Daniel reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box he had been carrying for weeks, waiting for the right moment. I'm not good at speeches, he said. I'm better with pictures than words. But I need you to know that you have changed everything for me. You and Emma, you are my whole world now, and I cannot imagine spending another day without knowing you are going to be mine forever. He opened the box, revealing a simple diamond ring that caught the starlight. Scarlett Morgan, will you marry me? Scarlett's hand flew to her mouth. Tears spilled down her cheeks, and when she spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. Yes. Yes, 1,000 times yes. Daniel slipped the ring onto her finger, and then he was kissing her, and she was laughing and crying at the same time, and somewhere in the house behind them, Emma stirred in her sleep and smiled. 2 years later, they stood in the backyard of their new home, surrounded by friends and family who had gathered to witness their wedding. Scarlett walked down the aisle in a simple white dress, her blonde hair loose around her shoulders, looking more beautiful than Daniel had ever seen her. Emma walked ahead of her scattering rose petals with the serious concentration of a child who understood the importance of what she was doing. Susan sat in the front row, crying happy tears, a photo of Rachel in a locket around her neck, so she could be part of this day too. The vows they exchanged were simple but heartfelt. You showed up broken on my doorstep, Daniel said, and I almost turned you away. But the best decisions I have ever made were the ones I made with my heart, not my fear. You gave me something I never thought I would have, Scarlett replied. A family, a home, a place where I finally belong. And Emma not to be left out, added her own vow in a voice loud enough for everyone to hear. I promise to share my rocks with you forever. The laughter that followed was joyful and pure, the sound of a family coming together in all the ways that mattered. Later, as the reception wound down and the stars came out, Daniel found Scarlett standing alone on the edge of the yard, looking up at the sky. He wrapped his arms around her from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. Happy, he asked.
More than I ever thought possible,
She replied. She turned in his arms, and he noticed her hand resting on her stomach in a way that was new and deliberate. I have something to tell you, she said softly. Daniel's eyes widened as understanding dawned. Are you? She nodded, tears and joy mixing on her face. We are going to need more pancakes. Drop a heart in the comments if you believe that some risks are worth taking, some boundaries worth crossing, and some loves worth fighting for. Have you ever taken a chance on love when everything told you not to? We would love to hear your story in the comments below. Share this video with someone who needs a reminder that beautiful beginnings can come from the most unexpected moments. Tell us where in the world you are watching from. We love seeing how far our stories travel. Thank you for joining us on this journey. Until next time, remember that the best love stories are the ones we have the courage to write ourselves.